This is a story of two young men, which ends in tragedy. Their names are Askia Kafra and Daniel Beckwitt. Polar opposites of each other, these two natives of Maryland crossed paths in unlikely ways. And the bizarre circumstances which led to Askia Kafra's death still leaves many confused.
Prosecutors say Beckwitt kept Askia Kafra as a virtual slave.
Millionaire and computer hacker Daniel Beckwitt had dug an elaborate network of tunnels underneath his Bethesda home because he believed North Korea was planning a nuclear attack.
Kafra's body was found after a fire broke out in the home.
How bad is the smoke when you go down the steps? Okay, and what do you do?
I'm yelling like, Askia, fire, gotta get out.
Daniel Beckwitt created a makeshift bunker and had another man help him dig tunnels underneath his Bethesda home.
He kept Askia Kafra captive there, and in 2017, that home went up in flames. Firefighters found Kafra's body underneath the home.
Askia Kafra was a well-liked young man. Friends of his who spoke to me remember him fondly as a bright, sociable, athletic, and entrepreneurial spirit who liked to skateboard and was on the school's wrestling team.
I have really good memories of him because he was just such a nice, kind person.
So he was the type of person where, you knew him for 6 months and you felt like you knew him your entire lifetime.
Every time we went somewhere, everyone's like, oh, Askia,
We had always talked about, being excited to both be, 21 and be able to go out and drink together. We were always, he died a couple days being 21, and it's tragic. It really is tragic. I'm glad you're looking into it more because I think it's something that should be looked into.
My name is Dear Kafra. I am father of Askia Kafra. Daniel Beckwitt murdered my son.
On September 10th, 2017, Askia Kafra died in an electrical fire while digging tunnels for a makeshift nuclear bunker underneath Daniel Beckwitt's home.
This is how my son was found dead. He was burnt from head to foot. His face was grimacing in agony. He was literally cooked, nay, barbecued.
When firefighters arrived at the scene, they struggled to navigate through Daniel Beckwitt's home because of extreme amounts of debris and trash blocking the way. Before he succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning, Askia was only 2 steps away from almost certain safety, but the hoarding conditions of the home prevented him from making it out alive.
He was found lying nude, totally naked, lying in a supine position on top of a blue arc welding machine. The entire situation is unresolved.
Askia Kafra wanted the good life. Expensive cars, beautiful women, and vast amounts of riches. Unfortunately, he was an ordinary kid from a middle-class home, so attaining that sort of exorbitant wealth seemed like a pipe dream. But uncertainty did nothing to quell Askia's ravenous ambition. He had $1 million idea for a crowdfunding app called Equity Shark, which would allow nascent startups to receive investments from the public. Askia believed that it would be the next big thing. He just needed to secure funding from investors to make it happen. And that's when he set his sights on the Teal Fellowship.
College is sort of, on the one hand, giving people learning, on the other hand, taking away some future opportunities by loading the next generation down with debt.
September 2010, billionaire tech giant Peter Thiel launched the Teal Fellowship, which offered promising young entrepreneurs $100,000 to drop out of college and pursue their passions. For Askia, this was his chance to turn his dreams into reality. But there was still one thing holding him back. Equity Shark needed a lot of work, and Askia lacked the funding. That's when he met Daniel Beckwitt, who offered to invest $5,000 in Equity Shark for 5% stake in the company. As I said earlier, Askia Khafra and Daniel Beckwitt were polar opposites of each other. While Askia is remembered for being popular and kind, Daniel Beckwitt was a loner and a misfit. Daniel Beckwitt's story begins here at 5212 Danbury Road. It's his childhood home, and it's where Askia Khafra died. It's a house that stands nestled under a canopy of hickory trees and on top of a steep hill. Today it remains behind a fence of barbed wire and vines. Askia Khafra's family leave flowers to this day. His neighbors, who are mostly teachers, lawyers, and scientists from the nearby National Institutes of Health, recall that the Beckwitt family was eccentric and reclusive. His father, David Beckwitt, a singer and professor, was elderly and suffered from Parkinson's disease. Therefore, his mother, Linda Beckwitt, who was over 20 years younger than her husband, took on a dominant familial role. Growing up, Daniel rarely stepped outside unchaperoned by his mother and didn't play with other children in the neighborhood. Even into his teenage years, Daniel would go trick-or-treating, followed closely by his parents, all three of them in matching costumes. Daniel was homeschooled from kindergarten until the 12th grade by his mother, who became convinced of his genius after she found him reading a Hardy Boys book while he was still a toddler. Years later, Daniel would claim on Reddit that he had an IQ of 170. At a young age, he displayed an aptitude for tinkering with machinery. When he was 11, he became interested in programming. During summer, he attended science camp at the National Institutes of Health, where he built rudimentary robots. By the time he was 15, he was experimenting with explosives in his backyard. Eventually, Daniel became interested in the culture of phone phreaking, which is a community of individuals interested in exploiting flaws in telecommunication systems. Sometime in the late 2000s, he started orbiting a community of phone phreakers called the Phone Losers of America, founded by a man named Brad Carter. I spoke to Brad, and this is what he told me.
I'm Brad Carter. I run the Phone Losers of America. Phone Losers of America started off as kind of a telephone hacking group in the 1990s, and Skunkworks was a regular caller into my old show on Party 93.4. It was called The Phone Show, and he annoyed the crap out of me.
Hello? Are you finally, actually picking up on me?
He would go on and on about Google Voice and, just specific topics that I didn't care about, but then he would also start throwing in things about killing children and being a basement dweller and, all kinds of chemicals and stuff. Chemical reactions. He was really obsessed with that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you had to do more serial killings, I guess.
Exactly. That's why I was wondering if you had the craniotomy saw and the potassium hydroxide. I mean, it's extremely hard to cut into the human cranium using a regular hacksaw, actually.
I know, right?
He was so cringe. He was like, oh, I'm just these psycho, smart, serial killer type people. If I want to get into just the craziest thing he ever did, it was he had trapped a raccoon that was eating all his garbage, and he was trying to kill it. He was like, hey, I'll stream it to Random and some other people, and I'm gonna use this air gun to shoot this raccoon in a cage. And this is crazy. This is legit psycho behavior. That was the most psycho thing he ever did, for sure. He wanted to come across as this crazy psycho genius serial killer type guy, which is why do you want to come across as that?
Guys, you know the scene in the movie where the cops are busting in, the hacker's like, oh no, and he's trying to EMP his drives or something? Is that where the idea came from?
Actually, the idea came from a presentation that the Shmoo Group put on at DEF CON. They came up with their own anti-forensics challenge for destroying a hard drive in 60 seconds, and they failed at it pretty badly, crowdsourced it, and I decided to go ahead and take on the challenge.
The challenge was to remotely destroy a hard drive in 60 seconds while following these rules.
When you fire the hard drive, you have 60 seconds to destroy it. You must not set off fire suppression, smoke sensors, seismic sensors, because we're near banks. Must not harm other system in the rack, and you must not harm the humans that happen to be nearby when you're lighting off your thermite or magnesium or something like that.
Daniel, who was in the audience that day, decided that he would give it a shot. So he bought a fire protection suit on eBay, and he spent the next year troubleshooting different methods in order to win the challenge. To remotely destroy a hard drive, he ran hundreds of tests using mixtures of thermite, calcium sulfate, and potassium nitrate.
Now, I ended up doing around 300 tests like this.
Soon, he tried melting the hard drives in a pit in his backyard.
And you're going to notice in a second here, the thermite actually catches. This is the Thermex C210, which is quite good.
At the time, Daniel was studying electrical engineering at the University of Illinois. Even though he was only at school for less than 2 years, he managed to have several run-ins with the law, which ended with him being arrested and expelled from school.
One time, he told me he was ordering, like, I think it was ammonium nitrate, you know, some thing that's obviously for bomb making. But he ordered it to someone else's dorm. So he was like, okay, well, before it gets sent to their dorm, I'll just pick the lock into the shipping and receiving room at my dorm and then just take the package before it gets there. He told me, well, the bomb squad got to it. An FBI guy called him and asked him about it.
To find out more, I contacted Daniel's old roommate and Lieutenant James Carter at the Investigation Division at the University of Illinois Police Department.
He was a strange kid, and that's an understatement, but he had taken a video of himself taking a syringe and extracting synovial fluid from his knee joint, putting it into a shot glass or a small cup, and then drinking it.
Yeah, this is his computer and his work area. Yeah, so this is basically me standing in the doorway of my bedroom. He co-opted all of this common space for his experiments. So yeah, this like glazy, glossy, like you would think that was water, but it was just melted, dried countertop from his thermite experiment.
He was making thermite, so he could burn his hard drive if anybody was ever to find out what he was doing with his computer. That's what kind of triggered, the FBI involvement. They basically brought in the bomb unit, basically investigated it on like a terrorist threat level.
One of the main FBI agents was so much like Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad. And, first he sees the bleach and he's like, all right, if we find ammonia, then we know we got a situation here. And sure enough, a few minutes later, I hear the guy yell, bingo, when he's holding up the bottle of ammonia.
He installed keyloggers, on computers in, some of the computer labs. They had a computer lab at Hendrick House. They had a staff computer at the front desk. He put keyloggers into those computers too, and I think he used credentials to log in, as a staff member, and then that's how he gained access to the database that had everybody's personal information in it.
Using keyloggers, he collected the email login information of his professors and sent out mass mail to students. Sometimes he canceled exams or offered the answers to the highest bidder. Occasionally, he would simply type penis, hit send, and call it a day. Daniel cost the university $22,000 in damages by vandalizing the computer lab as well as professors' offices. In one case, he filled a professor's office with a smoothie of durian, which is the most foul-smelling fruit on earth.
There was a report of one particular engineering professor getting his office door locked shut. Somebody had taken some sort of, compound of glue, and I think they determined it was glue and graphite, and squeezed it into the keyhole in his office door, making it impossible for him to, take his key and key into his office. And that happened a few times. And then that's when other events started happening. He kept locking the doors. He kept sending emails. He was reverse engineering iCards so he could get into the building and essentially not be in the building under his credentials. There was a lot of stuff he was doing, getting into the tunnels, the underground steam tunnel system that's across the university. I had spoken with TAs, I had spoken with other engineering students, and I would ask, do you know anything about this ECE hacker? And everybody would say, well, no, yeah, we've heard about it, but we don't know who he is. So I would ask everybody I interviewed, I understand you don't know who it is, but if you could think about a person in the College of Engineering who would be capable of doing something like this, who would it be? I went back over my notes. 3 or 4 people in my investigation mentioned his name, Dan Beckwitt. I'm like, okay. So after that, I was like, well, let me start focusing my attention on this, Dan Beckwitt. There was stuff operating on his desktop that, pretty much said, hey, I'm the ECE hacker, and then gave him the go-ahead to arrest him.
Police officers then searched Daniel's room. Inside, they found a rifle, the hood of a fire protection suit, several lockpicks, reverse-engineered ID cards, and keyloggers. They also found a list of social security numbers belonging to faculty members and students.
It was the most filthy, disgusting room I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there was stuff everywhere.
Daniel was arrested and formally charged with 5 counts of property damage, 2 counts of computer fraud, tampering with documents, and illegally possessing a firearm. After that, Daniel took to Reddit to do an Ask Me Anything titled, I am a 22-year-old who is going to plead guilty to a felony computer hacking charge in 5 days. When someone asked, what did you do? He responded with, I launched a huge, multifaceted attack against my university for nothing but lulz, involving just about every attack in the book. I made the university's IT department look like damn fools.
Why did you stop at the university?
Well, there was, I don't know if you've looked me up much, but I mentally had some issues, hacked into some computers, and was not welcome. I was not in a good place mentally at the time.
Why? What was going on? What was going on?
I was still the death of my mom.
A year before Daniel was arrested and expelled from school, his mother, Linda Beckwitt, died of cancer, which she hid from her family and medical professionals. In 2013, Daniel returned to his childhood home on Danbury Road as its sole occupant. His father moved into a retirement home after his Parkinson's disease had deteriorated.
Did you have any problem him leaving you here by yourself?
Oh yeah, I mean, I took it very hard at first. I'm like, oh, first my mom's dead, and now my dad's gone, and I'm just like abandoned, you know. It's one of the reasons I first started the shelter too. I was worried about like people coming in and harming me and stuff, and I wanted a more defensive position than a regular house, you could say.
Daniel inherited $2.6 million after his mother's death. With that, he began to invest in Bitcoin, and he made a fortune. In a now deleted Reddit comment, Daniel thanked the technology board on 4chan, G, for turning him onto Bitcoin as early as 2010. In a Reddit Ask Me Anything, he wrote about his life as a multimillionaire, under 40 years old. I still shop at Walmart. I don't hang out at country clubs all day golfing. I do a lot of heavy manual labor that I could easily pay others for. I usually don't tell people I'm rich. When I do, the reaction is generally nonplussed, but occasionally people seem to develop inferiority complexes and feel uncomfortable. After Askia's death, prosecutors said that Daniel had as much as $16 million stashed away in profits he made day trading stocks and buying Bitcoin. Over the course of the next 4 years, Daniel lived a solitary existence. Other than briefly studying to become an EMT, he stayed cooped up in his childhood home while its hoarding conditions worsened. He had little interest in participating in the real world. He didn't own a phone, he preferred Google Voice instead. Rather than renewing his car insurance after it expired, he chose to rent a vehicle on the rare occasion that he needed one. And of course, as a recluse, he had no interest in obtaining a passport. He was a multimillionaire who wasn't interested in spending his wealth. Instead, he remained living in his modest childhood home and tinkering with machinery just like he did during his adolescence.
I actually got a call, and it was an IRS investigator, and they were asking me about his Bitcoin account. They were basically saying that he was in possession of basically like $1.2 billion worth of Bitcoin. Around the time of the call, the Bitcoin were like $55,000 of Bitcoin. And he had $1.2 billion worth of them, like, you know, somewhere in the blockchain. That was around the time I found out that he had, had hired that kid and he died, in that tunnel, working at his house in Bethesda.
Cool. All right. You ready?
Yep.
How did you meet Askia?
That's a deep-rooted memory right there. But I first met Askia in kindergarten. He was an amazing human being. He was incredibly intelligent. He was very friendly. He was kind. He was considerate. I think everybody that he knows can definitely just give a testament to how much they enjoyed being around him.
He was a person that you wanted to be around. He always just brought so much joy to everyone. He always had the craziest ideas. He's always like the entertainer. I don't know anyone that didn't like him.
Meeting him early in elementary school, he was always like a super fun kid, always laughing. We played in jazz band together in 8th grade, both playing guitar. There were a lot of things that came very, very naturally to him as a musician and as a guitar player that I don't feel like I developed until later on.
Askia was a budding musician. He emulated Jimi Hendrix, both in substance and style. He was also quite a good trombone player. A wrestler, he also played lacrosse. I remember when he was in 5th grade, he topped the class and he actually got a presidential award certificate from President George W. Bush at the time.
You were proud of him?
Yes, I was proud of him, but I was also concerned. I was concerned about the fact that he dropped out of college. I told him that he should have been able to try and develop his business while still pursuing his undergraduate degree. You see, I don't believe that wealth is a measure of a man. I'm not saying it isn't important. I'm just saying I do not believe it is a measure of a man. I believe the true measure of a man is what he contributes to society, to uplifting society. I believe that's how Oscar pictured things. The measure of a man was his wealth. He talked about Jeff Bezos. He talked about Peter Thiel. He talked about Elon Musk. He was just enamored with that. And I believe his philosophy developed here in the States. Because in this country, it seems to be get rich fast at all cost.
Askia Cafra had big dreams. When he was in middle school, he and his friend Tavon Giaquinto started a landscaping company. In high school, he built a 3D printer, and together they started a company offering 3D printing services. Following that, they started a clothing company.
Me and him were both trying to get into the startup world. I was focused on marketing, and he was focused on more the finance part of things. At the time, I know he had said equity shark. It really defines who you want to be. When you're looking for people to invest in your company, they typically call those sharks, like on Shark Tank. And so we wanted to create that same type of environment for the average general person, where they could have someone invest in their company.
Askia taught himself coding and worked tirelessly to bring Equity Shark to fruition. They aggressively sought out investors, but no one would give them funding. After applying to Y Combinator and getting rejected in the third round, Askia told Tavon about the Teal Fellowship.
Askia just really sold me on it that day, and he's like, we gotta sign up for this.
Around the same time, Askia started to frequent a now defunct live streaming website called blab.im. On the site was a section dedicated to software developing and investing. One day, while watching the infamous farmer bro Martin Shkreli live stream on the site, he first laid eyes on Daniel Beckwitt. Daniel, who used the handle 3-Alarm Lamp Scooter, impressed Askia. Not only did he seem to be friends with Martin Shkreli, but he also claimed to be a multimillionaire investor and hacker. Askia became a regular viewer of Daniel's livestream. Daniel, who liberally shared tips with his viewers about investing and technology, was open to investment opportunities. And one day, Askia contacted him and told him about Equity Shark. They scheduled a meeting at a hookah bar in Rockville, Maryland. Askia and Tavon waited 15 minutes for Daniel to show up. And when he did, they couldn't help but notice that he seemed to have something hidden under his gray t-shirt.
You could clearly see that there was like a bulletproof vest that he was wearing under his shirt. And so I did think that was a little odd at first. I personally assumed that maybe he was like ex-military or something like that. I didn't really think much of it.
The meeting lasted for 30 minutes, and by the end of it, Daniel Beckwitt seemed impressed.
He liked the idea. He loved it. His only thing at the time was, how are we going to get this thing built and how much is it going to cost? At the time, I think the cost for us to get a full prototype done and coded was about 10 grand. When he heard about the Teal Fellowship, he was super excited. That's what really sold him into, kind of being ready to invest in us that day.
After leaving the hookah bar, they walked Daniel to his truck.
He mentioned how he was going to be going back up north near his way to finish working on his bunker later. And then I remember him saying that, I thought it was kind of odd. Like, oh, interesting, this guy's a bunker. What do you have a bunker for? And I remember him saying, I've been building this for a while. It's just to keep myself protected and safe in case of a nuclear war or a nuclear disaster.
With Daniel's funding, they bought brand new tailored suits in preparation for their meeting with the Teal Fellowship manager. All they had to do was make it to the meeting on time and make a great pitch. But unfortunately, that didn't end up happening.
I don't remember how, but we somehow end up putting in the wrong address. But we end up going to the wrong location. At that point, we're just like, we're just freaking out. We don't know what to do. And we get to the meeting and we're about maybe 15 minutes late. And then they say, hey, look, we ran out of time. We're going to have to call you guys back or schedule the meeting again.
When they arrived back in Maryland, Daniel stopped replying to Askia's messages. After weeks of trying to contact Daniel, Askia wrote to him, I know that this will be successful. There's no doubt in my head. I'd even take this investment as debt, because that's how much I believe in this, even though obviously I don't currently have the money to be able to pay you back. I'd literally work a minimum wage job for a few years if I had to, or just finish school and get a boring ass job somewhere. or just work it off at the compound. A few weeks later, Daniel finally replied. He agreed to give them more money and took up Asquia's offer to help him dig the tunnels. Between January to September 2017, Asquia went to Beckwitt's house a total of 5 times and stayed there working on the tunnels for days to weeks at a time. Daniel would pick Asquia up at his parents' house in the early morning, around 3 a.m. Although Daniel only lived 14 minutes away from Asquia, he prolonged the drive for hours in order to mask his home's actual location.
He used to blindfold my son with dark glasses and drive him for as much as 1-2 hours way out to Manassas in Virginia. So my son was under the belief that these tunnels were out in the mountains of Virginia. And then he would give him a key lanyard to hold, but lead him into his basement with Asquia holding the key lanyard and blindfolded, and he holding the other end. Take him to the hole in the ground, the shaft that leads down to the tunnel, and it's only at that point the blindfold was removed. Unfortunately, it's almost like a dog on a leash.
He's cool with it. I mean, I told him before he ever came, I was like, this is one of the conditions.
What did you tell me what you said?
Oh, I just said, I'm concerned about people knowing exactly where this is at. And as a result, if you want to come here, put this on for the duration of the drive and walking in. And he was always cool with it,
Okay.
so that if he did decide to ever turn on me or whatever, he'd be like, oh yeah, that's down in Lake Anna or wherever. And,
I get it,
have no
because
idea.
if North Korea bombs us,
Everyone's
you don't
gonna
want
be looking
everybody
for
coming
us.
for your bunker.
Exactly. Exactly.
I understand.
Daniel was hiding the IP address, so he couldn't see where he was at. Yeah, so he thought he was in Virginia. And I remember Asquia saying, like, I know what I'll do though. I'm gonna use my GPS next time to track it so that I can figure out the location. Asquia figured out that he was actually in this guy's house.
Doug Hart, a 21-year-old construction worker from Long Island, was also blindfolded when Daniel brought him to his house to work on the bunker. Just like Asquia, Daniel met him through blab.im. Dick Rocket, and yes, that's a real name, was also another man who worked on the bunker. Now, Dick Rocket is somewhat of a mystery to me, and that's because of his impressive resume. He graduated law school at Berkeley, worked in New York as an investment fund attorney, started a private space company called New Space Global, and according to Tavon, he also worked at the world's largest money manager, BlackRock. I tried reaching out to Dick, but I didn't get a response, so unfortunately his connection to Daniel, and why he was helping him dig the tunnels, still eludes me.
Him and Beckwitt, I remember we met up with him at a Taco Bell once. That's when Beckwitt introduced him to us. But him and Beckwitt were talking about investing into space mining. Like, that was their big thing that they wanted to put money towards, space mining.
While working on the bunker, Asquia was only permitted to stay in the basement and the tunnels. Daniel kept the doors in the basement locked, so Asquia never saw the rest of the house or outside. Inside the tunnels, Daniel set up rudimentary living quarters. It was a compact space with a single mattress, a mini fridge, a microwave, and a ceiling fan. Daniel powered the tunnels with a daisy chain of power strips and extension cords. Inside the tunnels, Daniel had set up a ventilation system and Wi-Fi. There was a shower head, but using it made the floors muddy. So Asquia washed himself with wet wipes instead. There was no toilet, so he relieved himself in a bucket and masked the smell with wiper fluid. To dispose of the waste, Daniel devised a winch system to haul the bucket from the basement to the first floor, where he would dispose of it in the toilet. If Asquia needed fresh air, Daniel obliged, but he was required to wear duct-taped sunglasses while outside. Daniel didn't own a phone, so they used Google Chats. However, this wasn't an ideal form of communication, because occasionally, Asquia would lose connection due to poor Wi-Fi in the bunker. Sometimes he would have to bang on the wall near the basement door to get Daniel's attention.
I remember once, I think we had an argument about those same tunnels and the work he was doing. And he got so angry with me that he asked me to stop the car, and he jumped out the car and went by somebody. He came home afterwards, But you see, you also, as a father, you have to be careful that you run off a child permanently. Many things I told him, he would rebut it and tell me Beckwitt was competent at that, Beckwitt was competent at that. It was like Beckwitt was a Superman. He was so confident that Beckwitt knew everything, It was like he was hypnotized.
My mom caught wind of it as well because, Asquia's parents were super close with my parents. So at some point, I think that she even kind of knew about the tunnels, and she was actually like trying to convince him to stop. She actually sat him down one day when we were hanging out, And she sort of like pleaded with him and said, yeah, like, there's no way this can be really safe.
His mother, she sat down and talked to him for over an hour, telling him about the dangers and so on. And this was after he had gone about 4 times to the tunnels. When she talked with him, he stopped going for a while, maybe a month or more.
Sometime in spring 2017, the Teal Fellowship officially passed on Equity Shark. After failing to attract new investors, Esquia became worried that Equity Shark would flatline without additional capital. Therefore, he broke his promise not to go back to the tunnels and texted Daniel asking him for more work. It took a while, but Daniel finally answered.
In 2017, my son went 5 times. On the 5th time, the last time that we saw him leave, he stayed the longest.
Can you tell me about the last time you saw him alive?
Yes, as usual, Beckwitt was supposed to be coming maybe 11 or 12. My wife and myself were lying down in the bed waiting to see Oscar leave. And finally, sometime in the wee hours of the morning, I'm not sure if it was 2 or 3 in the morning, Oscar came to say he was going. He gave his mother a kiss. Little did we know that that would be the last time we would ever communicate with our son.
On September 10th, 2017, Daniel was up late browsing Reddit into the early morning. Shortly after commenting on a thread about the Equifax hackers, he fell asleep. At 2:32 a.m., Esquia messaged Daniel on Google Chat. "Holy shit, bro, there's no power down here." 5 minutes later, he wrote, "And smoke in the basement." 14 minutes later, Esquia sent another message. "Never mind about the smoke, but yeah, pitch black down here, and no airflow. Please try to fix when you see this." 6 hours later, Daniel woke up at approximately 9 a.m. and saw Esquia's messages. Then he walked from his upstairs bedroom to the breaker box in his basement. After he felt satisfied that he fixed the problem, he wrote to Esquia, "Pretty major electrical failure. Just switch it all over to a different circuit." After that, he went back upstairs to use his laptop. At 9:07 a.m., he left another comment on Reddit. 20 minutes later, Esquia wrote, "Sheesh, is the fuse just done? Still nothing down here, by the way. It's a whole nother level of darkness." 2 minutes later, Daniel replied, "Oh, fuck. I thought I got the lights too. One sec." Once again, Daniel went downstairs to the basement to fix the problem. Afterwards, he went back upstairs and fell asleep. He woke up 2 hours later and wrote 4 additional comments on Reddit between 11:24 to 11:49 a.m. At 3 p.m., Daniel went downstairs to the kitchen on the main floor to fix himself something to eat. Following that, he went back upstairs to his bedroom and used his laptop. At 4 p.m., Daniel heard a beeping noise coming from the carbon monoxide detector in the dining room. He told police that it made a single beeping noise, which he understood to indicate another power failure. After waiting 20 to 30 minutes, Daniel went down to the basement to manually reset the breaker. He didn't check on Esquia when he was there. At 4:16 p.m., Esquia messaged Daniel, apologizing for not replying to the message he sent him at 9:29 a.m. "Yo, my bad. I was tired as fuck. I def smell smoke down here." Daniel once again went down to the basement to check the electrical service panel and reset any tripped breakers. He said that there was a single breaker tripped, which he reset. While walking up the stairs, he said that he heard a loud buzzing sound coming from the kitchen. When he went to investigate, he heard a series of popping noises coming from the circuit breaker, followed by an explosion. He said that smoke started to rise from the basement to the kitchen floor. Daniel said that he then ran down to the basement.
How bad is smoke when you go down the steps? Is it in the finished area?
I think some of it was starting to leak out, but it's mostly in the unfinished area still at that point. There's like maybe a little trickling into the finished area.
Okay,
but
so
the unfinished area is just packed with smoke. Just seconds. I mean, it's literally just seconds packed with smoke.
Daniel said that he couldn't see Esquia through the smoke, but he assumed Esquia was near the dryer, which was only 8 to 10 feet in front of him.
So you make it to here, and you're like, "Hey,
Esquia, you gotta get out, fire."
And he says,
"Yo, dude.
What's the affect?" He's like, "Yo, dude." Or he's like, "Yo, dude." Or
it sounded more like, "Yo, dude." Sort of like that.
Okay.
It was very eerie sounding.
So what do you think at that point? I mean,
I'm just like, well, shit, I'm getting dizzy myself and starting to get real weak-kneed, and I gotta just rush out that door over there, get some fresh air.
Daniel didn't own a phone, so he tried to alert his neighbors to call 911.
I remember definitely the first time around, I just started screaming to all the neighbors, you know, help, help, fire, fire.
What were you thinking was going to happen to him at that point?
I was hoping he'd either run out there or he'd go out the back window.
This big window
Big
here.
window there, or the window well.
Well, this one's got bars on it.
Well, that's not the window. Yeah, that one does have bars on it on the side. I don't think you could get out there. That doesn't have bars.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's big. That's a big.
Yeah, that's a big one. I've jumped out myself before, you know.
Okay.
And then there's that window well on the front of the house. I thought he also could have got out there, or preferably he would have just gone down into the tunnels and gone out the backyard.
Why, when you are on the side of the basement, that it's not burning, it is not very smoky, and someone is on a burning, smoky side, why would you direct them to go towards windows which were steel barred or barred up with plywood? Why didn't he do the obvious? Come to my voice. I am on the safe side of the basement. There's not much smoke on my side. There was a door there. He indicated that he went through that door several times. So why wasn't it possible for him to direct my son to come through that door? The door must have been inaccessible.
Now, all of this happened literally just above my own backyard.
During the fire, his neighbor, Bruce LaShan, a TV reporter who lives in the house directly behind Daniel's, called 911 and ran up Chandler Street towards the fire.
I was the first person on the scene of the fire. I tried to get into the burning house to rescue Kafra, but it was just too dangerous.
Daniel said that he tried to get inside the house to save Askia a total of 4 times, but that he was driven back by the overwhelming heat. During his attempts to enter the house, he said that he removed a propane tank, gas cans, and other combustibles.
On the way out, you told me originally that you took a couple of gas cans.
Yeah,
but I never found those.
Well, one was supposed to be in the front yard and the other was on the side.
Okay, so I didn't get that. So
somebody might have walked off with them. Jeez.
Okay.
Yeah. Never found them.
He said that he also tried to dig a hole, hoping to enter the tunnel from his backyard, but gave up because he was too tired. Several firefighters arrived between 4:28 p.m. and 4:46 p.m. They struggled to make a path through the basement due to severe hoarding conditions. It took firefighters approximately 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to traverse the short distance from the basement side entrance to the fire. It only took 2 to 3 sprays of water, lasting approximately 15 to 30 seconds, to extinguish the fire. When the steam finally cleared, firefighters found Askia's lifeless body. Sometime later, Daniel was taken by fire and rescue personnel to the hospital to be treated for smoke inhalation and minor burns. It was later determined that the fire was caused by a defective outlet.
If I tell you where Askia was found, you gonna be cool with that?
I mean, I want to know. Might be a little upset, but I'm guessing it was.
You cool with me telling them where Askia was found and all? But Askia's found in the laundry room.
Oh, wow, I was so close to getting him.
Oh man, I was so close. They could have picked him up and taken him. I was so close.
Well, may not have been anything you could have done.
Oh wow, I mean,
that was just awful. So close, I almost rescued him. I almost rescued him.
Let me ask.
I have a daughter who is learning disabled after Askia was deceased without us knowing it. She kept saying, oh, my brother is coming home this weekend. My brother is coming home this weekend because apparently he had talked to her until they will come home the next weekend. Little did we know that that very same weekend we were supposed to be coming home was the weekend he died. We didn't know for about 2 days. We didn't watch local news. We weren't aware there was a fire in Bethesda. We just weren't aware. That happened on Tuesday, September the 12th. They said Askia was burnt beyond recognition. He could not be identified, and that I would have to get dental records to verify their contention that it was him. It's so difficult to explain how you feel in a situation like that, but I knew I had to tell my wife. I called her. I said, Claudia, you have got to come home now. I said, I cannot tell you everything, but there are 3 cops in our house right now, and you need to come home immediately. Claudia came to the door, remarkably poised and calm, and I was shocked to see that Claudia did not break down and cry, because I know my wife. It was her only son, and she had him late in life. She had him when she was 40 or 41, somewhere around there. And after they left, Claudia truly broke down. She broke down, really broke down. She came up to me, she was pounding me on my chest, and she said, "So our son is gone, so our son is gone." And I distinctly remember that night when we went to bed. It was like she was having a bad dream. She was repeating over and over, like almost in her sleep. She was repeating, "I want back my son." She was saying, "I want back my son." And I told her, "You know that's not going to happen." I guess I was being brutally frank. I said, "You know that's not going to happen. You know that's impossible."
I think Askia was legitimately deceived. You know, I think he was sort of led on by a person who pretended that he was interested in sort of bettering his life, or helping him with this, being invested in his company he was trying to get up off the ground. And I think that, in a sense, sort of made Askia, or convinced Askia, that doing this would sort of get him closer to that goal. But he definitely wasn't. He was working with somebody that didn't have his best interests at heart.
I feel like there are a lot of things that don't make sense, or as to how things may or may have not happened. There's just a lot of confusion in my mind. There was an electrical fire that sort of blocked whatever the only way for him to have gotten in and out of those tunnels was, and why was the fire started there? And why did it happen? It's hard to find the justification, or like the underlying logic, at least for me, as to why things happened the way they did.
I've never lost somebody that close to me. That was the first time that happened to me, so I had to really ingest that. Still haven't really ingested it, to be honest with you. I haven't really taken that moment in.
I was very angry. I was furious, actually, because now I knew that there was another person who was involved. I wanted him to be held accountable. I think the screwed up part about it is, even if we got what we wanted, like if he was put away for life, that would only be a semblance of what I feel like we could consider justice, because it's not going to change the fact that Askia is gone. He's dead. We can't bring him back. I mean, he's been denied the rest of his life because of somebody else's negligence.
We're all going to be being recorded, all right? Let's go.
All right, let's go.
We'll take you in upstairs first. There's not really any damage up there, so easy into it.
I think there was a camera of mine that was on this truck.
3 days after the fire, Daniel went back to his home with fire investigators and police.
Was on the bed right here.
Was that the bed you slept on?
Yeah.
And that's where you were when you noticed the,
Yeah, when I heard the beep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, laptop's not here. Charger.
Why all the chlorine?
Oh, just for cleaning. Just for cleaning purposes. I mean, this place needed cleaning.
Yeah, a little bit.
Really did. Take a look at the top of the stairs again. Oh, wait, did you? Oh, just money. Yeah, it's just money.
You just got a lot of cash laying around?
Yeah, I know. This is way messier than it was before. Even. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't in good shape before, but you can walk through a lot.
Daniel, I'm going to put a measuring cup full of money out on the front porch so we got it on the way out, okay?
Okay.
Oh my God,
there.
Yep, that makes sense. We're good. If anybody'd rather walk around, they can.
Should have worn my boots today. Now I'm afraid of tetanus.
And I'll try to mark them. Okay. So if we have to do any more work in here, we'll make sure we don't do anything bad.
Alrighty.
It took nearly 3 weeks for a team of 24 firefighters working 8 to 10-hour days to clean Daniel Beckwitt's home. The process was prolonged by safety concerns over combustible chemicals stored in every room of the house and within piles of trash. By the time they finished cleaning, $10,000 in cash and traveler's checks were found hidden within the mess. 8 months after Iskia's death, Daniel was arrested on May 25th, 2018.
And I got this phone call from Detective Smith, and she was on the line, and she said, "Mr. Kafra, we have arrested Daniel Beckwitt." I almost fainted. I was shocked.
On May 31st, 2018, a grand jury charged him with involuntary manslaughter and second-degree depraved heart murder, which is the killing of another person while acting with extreme disregard of human life, despite not explicitly intending to kill. On September 10th, 2018, Iskia's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Daniel Beckwitt on the anniversary of their son's death. Montgomery County officials also sued Daniel and his father, David Beckwitt. The lawsuit requested that a judge order the Beckwitt family to fill the tunnels and demolish the home. The entrance to the tunnel shaft drops 20 feet, and they're estimated to span 200 feet in multiple directions underground, stretching out as far as public roads and across property lines. Today, the home still stands, and the tunnels have not yet been filled up.
Askia told me lots of things that he wasn't even supposed to tell me.
Like what?
Told me about things down in the tunnel, and, quite a few things that he was supposed to be literally keeping secret. For instance, he told me about a special chamber underground in which Beckwitt told him not to go in there. It is dangerous, it has explosives and other dangerous stuff. I got the impression that that chamber underground had a door leading into it, and that the door was kept locked.
Right now, 2 more stories you need to know about as we head into this week. A bizarre case will finally come to an end tomorrow. Daniel Beckwitt is set to be sentenced.
Now, I want to let you know, second-degree depraved heart murder, the minimum sentence for that is 10 years. And I think the maximum was either 25 or 30 years. The judge at the sentencing gave him 9 years. 1 less than the minimum. I couldn't understand it. Here's her explanation. She don't believe that what happened rises to the level of a second-degree depraved heart murder. And because of that, this is the reason she gave him 9 years. And she praised him. She actually praised him. She said he's so bright, he's so intelligent, he has a lot to give to society. She said that he reminded her of her brother, who's a bright guy, who's a nuclear physicist. And I felt humiliated. I felt humiliated because I was a victim and he was the perpetrator of a crime. And how could you be praising the perpetrator of a crime at his sentencing? What about my feelings? Don't I matter? You know, you are praising this gentleman who did a criminal act, who 12 jurors believed committed murder and manslaughter. And then she gave him 9 years. That hurt my feelings. And you know the strange thing about it? She is an elected judge, and I had voted for her.
Daniel only spent a little over 3 years in prison before being released. His depraved heart murder conviction was overturned by a panel of 3 judges that also upheld his involuntary manslaughter conviction. They ruled that there wasn't enough evidence to meet the standard of depraved heart murder, which entails an extreme disregard for human life.
He made use of his exhaustive resources, I'm talking about his financial resources, and hired his attorneys to file an appeal against both convictions.
A few months after his sentence was reduced, he became eligible for parole. In July 2022, he was released from prison.
So, Mr. Beckwitt is currently out on probation, and in my opinion, he's got away with murder.
While I was returning to Toronto, it occurred to me that Askia and Daniel were reflections of one another. Daniel didn't care about anybody but himself, while Askia loved others and was loved in turn. It was only due to the everlasting bonds that Askia had forged during his short life that Daniel's callous apathy and negligence was able to irreparably scar so many. Furthermore, I'm still left wondering about the fire. Prosecutors argued in court that Askia could not escape because his route out was blocked by severe hoarding conditions in the basement. In that case, why was Daniel able to enter the basement several times during the fire and roam freely enough to remove gas canisters? I also don't understand why Daniel told him to escape through windows, which mostly had steel bars on them, instead of directing Askia safely to one of the doors that he testified he had used repeatedly. Additionally, I struggled to grasp why Daniel reacted so casually during the 14 hours preceding Askia's death.
It's strange that someone who's running from a fire could end up in a position in which they appear to be lying on a reclining chair.
For now, Daniel's testimony and the official theory presented in court is all we have to go off of. But personally, I don't think I'll ever stop pondering about what exactly happened on that day. Here's to the memory of Askia Kafra.
I don't know, it was probably like years later that it really hit me that I'm not gonna see my friend again.
I was devastated. I'm still devastated. It feels like there's just a very large void in my life, a sense of emptiness that's gonna be there probably for the rest of my life.
I was very shy, you know what I mean? I was very like to myself, and he never made me feel like, yeah, he never made me feel like I was a loner, like an outcast.
Like I said, his earnest home in a box. That box has been there for 5 years. It has not been touched. It's in the same position. We have a pit there, a kind of shrine for him, with a large photo of him in his ROTC uniform and, you know, something saying, "Love you to the moon and back." And there can be no closure.
For this documentary, I traveled from Toronto, Canada to the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, where I tracked down and conducted interviews with Askia's friends and family. Additionally, I was able to work with brilliant people such as Ryan Probert, who is an award-winning composer, Humanot, who made incredible 3D renders for this project, and Tate Hover, who made all of the on-camera interviews look gorgeous. This was only made possible due to the generous contributions of my backers on Patreon. I have many more ideas like this in the works, and through your support, I will continue to make each documentary bigger and better. I'm trying to hit a goal of $3,000 a month on Patreon, and with your help, I believe that's a very achievable goal. And as always, until next time,